podcast where we talk to smart people, but not necessarily done by smart people?
That is an awesome question.
This one goes down probably on one of my top 5.
Hey, I like nutrition. I like to eat food.
This is the coolest thing ever. We're going to do this forever.
I wish I paid more attention in that class.
You know, I'm going to be honest, I don't understand that. As a man, I don't get it.
Welcome to smartpeoplepodcast.com.
Welcome to Smart People Podcast. Okay. Before we get into anything, I have to tell you something. You've been hearing me talk about what's on the horizon for Smart People Podcast for quite some time, and I'm finally here to say it is happening. We're making moves. And as part of that, we have created the Smart People Society. Now, what is that? Well, basically, that's a small group of individuals who will help us shape the future of the show, as well as some of the projects we're working on, including an upcoming ebook. I'm not going to give away too much, but essentially, we've been asking many of our guests a few questions off air, and this ebook will be based around what those questions have told us. So anyways, for the Smart People Society, we're really looking to limit it to around 50 to 100 people. And this is for those of you who really feel like you have connected with this show. You know, I'm not so much concerned about how long you've been listening, but really how much you feel this content, this idea resonates with you. Do you look forward to new episodes? Do they constantly spark new ideas, new thoughts, creative endeavors? And most importantly, do you feel like this show has added a fairly substantial amount of value in some way to your life? If so, head on over to smartpeoplepodcast.com/society. That's smartpeoplepodcast.com/society. Now, again, this is going to be a limited crew. We really want to be able to interact with you, and we want people who are willing to give us that time. But it's not all take. Of course, we've got some goodies for you. And as things roll out, you'll also have VIP access to those. And keep in mind, there's nothing for sale here. You're not going to a sales page, right? This is just, we want to connect with the people that we build this show for. Last thing I will say is, if you have already emailed me about this, because many of you have, don't worry, you are included. You are one of the early few. You'll be part of it and you'll get all the goodies. Okay, let's get started. This week on the show, we have an absolutely incredible episode. I feel like our guest this week is my doppelganger in the world where I was much more diligent, hardworking, and successful. We're speaking with Adam Braun, who is a New York Times bestselling author and the CEO and co-founder of MissionU, a debt-free college alternative for the 21st century. You may have heard of Adam. He has been doing some incredible things for a while now, because prior to MissionU, he founded and led Pencils of Promise, an award-winning organization that has built 400 plus schools across the world and raised more than $45 million. He's been featured as a speaker at the White House. He was named to Forbes 30 Under 30, Business Insider's 40 Under 40, Wired Magazine's 50 People Who Are Changing the World, and his book, The Promise of a Pencil, debuted at number 2 on the New York Times bestseller. And we go a lot of places with this interview. We talk about the human drive to always want more and never be satisfied. We talk about what Adam looks for when building a team or when hiring new people. We talk about the future of college and education in general, and much more. All right, so enough with the intro. It's time to get Adam's interview up and running. Again, remember, if you're a super fan, head on over to smartpeoplepodcast.com/society. It is a first come, first served basis. We have a limited amount of spots for this. No sales pitch at all, I promise. This is just a community connection. Looking forward to it. Here it is, your interview with Adam Braun, as we discuss his new company, MissionU, and much more. Enjoy. Well, Adam, you are a busy man, and we appreciate you making the time to be on Smart People Podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
You know, Adam, I got to admit something. Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 34.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I didn't want to like you. I just didn't, because I'm 34 and you make me feel inferior.
There's plenty of people that make me feel inferior. It's all just orders of self perception. Trust me.
Yeah.
There are plenty of 34-year-olds that I look at and say, "Damn,
Yeah.
how did that person do that?"
Yeah, actually, that's really interesting because you hear that concept often, right? That as soon as you have the house you think you want, then you look at the houses that are bigger and better and all that. And that's in the material world. And we're going to talk about all your accomplishments, but you don't strike me as a material type guy. But that doesn't mean that you don't have the same wants or shortcomings as the average person. What does impact you? What does affect you as it relates to your success? Do you have to keep yourself in check on wanting to accomplish more, judging yourself against others? Or have you really kind of figured that out by now?
No, I mean, I'm like most people. I'm always self-evaluating and a person in a state of evolution. And so, I think what I've tried to do is just really understand a handful of things. One of them being just the actual, science behind happiness and meaning and success and fulfillment and all these things that people aspire towards. And one of those components that's just undeniable. I can't remember the name of the book, but I read this book years ago that really talked about just the power of relativity and how your perception of self is almost, not entirely, but very, very heavily a function of who you consider your peer set and who you compare yourself to. And so one of the really poignant examples in that book was about the fact that the infantrymen, like frontline soldiers, are never particularly resentful or jealous of generals. It's oftentimes like the sergeant that's like right above them. It's the person that they can actually see themselves in that position, and they ask, why aren't I there? So like I don't spend a lot of time thinking, we're talking about people that are our age, like, Mark Zuckerberg is our age.
Damn it. Thanks.
Yeah. So, I was class of 06 in college. So was he. I remember being essentially a beta tester for Facebook. We were one of the first 10 schools that got access. Wow. And like, I don't ever lose sleep thinking like, damn, why didn't I compare to Zuckerberg and what he's done? Like, how come I haven't, built Facebook? But I think you have the ability to define who are the people that you want to use as your anchors of accomplishment that, oftentimes you feel like are in your orbit. And what I've just tried to always do is anchor myself around people that are, meaningfully ahead of me, by a lot of standards, probably like ridiculously ahead of me,
right? But
that I try and build personal relationships with that I get to know on a very authentic basis. And what you realize once you start to spend time with people that, in some ways are like your heroes, is that they're not that different from you. They're people just the same. And, in building those relationships, a big takeaway for me has been like, I could go do that too. And so, when it was building Pencils of Promise, there were certain leaders in the not-for-profit space that had built organizations that were 10, 20, 30 times the size of mine when I was just starting. And, those were my anchors. But they weren't, the person who founded like American Cancer Society or, the largest organizations in the world. But it was those who had taken a path similar to the one that I aspired towards. And I think that's always helped keep me both motivated, but also, appreciative of what has happened in my life and all the good things that have resulted from a lot of hard work.
Yeah. One of the things that I completely agree with, and it took me a long time as well to realize, is most of the people who have built amazing things, amazing companies, or lead these organizations are just normal people. I mean, some I do put on a different level, but most are. And I'm curious, what do you think then, in your experience, differentiates them from the rest of us who just have the ideas but don't accomplish them?
No, I think one thing is a willingness to embrace fear and, in fact, run towards things that scare you. The title of the last chapter in my book, The Promise of a Pencil, is a phrase from Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who said, if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. And I don't think that most people actually buy that. I think most people aren't willing to pursue a dream that fundamentally scares them because they see a high likelihood of failure. And so I think the difference between those who, might do really good things and those who go out and do something absolutely extraordinary is one, tolerance to move forward in the face of fear. I think the second is just a relentless work ethic. Most people just are not willing to put in the hours that are required to outwork your competitors, to create innovation in an industry that hasn't been accomplished before. It just requires this relentless focus. And I saw the same thing in athletics. I played basketball all the way up through college. And, there was a lot of guys that I knew growing up as a kid playing AAU, kind of like all-star basketball, that had incredible talent, but just didn't have the work ethic required to make it to the next level. And so that's the other piece that I would say is like the willingness to move through the paralysis of fear. And then the second part is just an unrelenting work ethic. And when you combine those two things, and there's luck is a large part of it. Macro factors, the industry has to be moving in the right direction. You have to have some breaks that can fall your way. That somebody who has those first two traits, but just has really crappy timing, it might not work out. But I find if you have those two traits and you just keep on stepping up to the plate, even if your timing's off, you'll find a way to win eventually.
Really great insight there. I want to touch on both of them a little bit. This idea of failure holding people back and your dreams need to be big enough to scare you. What about the fact that you have these dreams, but knowing how likely it is that you'll fail or you won't accomplish them will put you in a worse off situation? So what I mean is, say you're in a job you don't like and you want to start a company, but you're going to have to put your life savings in, or at least $10,000. You've got a family to support, maybe. I don't know the exact situation, but everybody faces this where they say, look, but then I can spend 2-3 years building this, fail, be worse off than I am now, and 3 years older.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any entrepreneurial situation, in any leap of faith that requires a risk, you can always evaluate the downside. I think when you have family that you need to support, that downside is much, much more significant than when you don't, which is why I personally advocate for people taking entrepreneurial leaps when they are young, because you don't have that house with the mortgage and the cars and the kids' school and all of these components of life that create one, just a higher monthly burn rate, like you just have these institutional kind of costs in your life. But two, the learnings from failure, which I think a lot of people underestimate, can be reapplied in the next, at bat, whatever that looks like, especially if you're young. And so, if I take, Pencil of Promise and then MissionU, my current focus, into account. I mean, when I started Pencil of Promise, I was 24. I had a great job working at Bain & Company. I had a six-figure salary, not like crazy six figures, but like, right about at six figures. And I was getting calls on a weekly basis from headhunters in private equity and hedge funds that were offering a $250,000 a year compensation to come and join their companies. And that was like very common. That's just what happens when you're in that role, and it's an incredible thing. And, I wanted to instead pursue a path in which, I was going to put $25 in a bank account and try and, build my own nonprofit, making less than a third of what I was supposed to make at Bain that year, and forego all that money. And I think by many accounts, I could have done the same analysis. And, I in fact did. I mean, I said, what would happen if 5 years from now this is successful, this is not successful, versus if I took one of these jobs? And, if I took one of those finance jobs, I have 5 years from now, like I'd have $1 million+ banked, whereas that's not likely the scenario in going and building your own nonprofit. But I did think about, 20 years from now, what would my life look like if both of these things were different paths and both of them were to lead to success? And what I netted out with was, 20 years from now in the finance route, I'd have a bunch of big houses, I'd have a bunch of cool cars, a boat, and my kids' college education would be paid for, et cetera. If I built a great nonprofit and led that for 20 years, I would likely have a solid house. It wouldn't be as crazy. I probably wouldn't have multiple. I'd have a solid car. It probably wouldn't be as crazy. But hundreds of schools, literally hundreds of schools around the world would be built as a result of that effort and that leap of faith. And when I weighed out just the material possessions, like the material impact of those two paths, it was unequivocally easy for me to say I should be taking that latter path. Now, again, like we talk about fear, the reality is I didn't really weigh the downside. I think most entrepreneurs have this, or at least entrepreneurs that succeed, they have this willingness, this ability to kind of blind themselves to what would happen if this fails. Because the person who spends, any like meaningful amount of time as to what would happen if this fails is already lost. I think that you have to go into it saying, there is no outcome here except for success. And it will be insanely hard. And there will be many moments where it feels like it's all going to fall apart and it's not worth it and it's going to fail. But I know with absolute conviction that this will succeed. And it's that mentality that keeps you pushing through those really challenging times and enables you to ultimately find success.
You mentioned the work ethic as well. Like, have you always known you've had this strong work ethic? And you mentioned the weekends you try to focus on your family. Have you ever looked at the fact that work ethic can be out of balance?
Yeah. Look, I think, especially now that I have two young kids, I mean, when I was building Pencils of Promise, I was living in New York and I had no children. And so I could be selfish with my time and say, this is about what I want to work on. Now that I have children, I don't want to be away from them at all if I don't have to. I realize that I do need to be away from them a significant amount of time so that I can have the impact that I want to have and ultimately provide the life for them that I would like them to lead. But I understand that the game changes entirely once you have children. And, what I would say is like, and this is not an original idea of mine, I've heard others share this, one friend in particular, but, I don't think there is an achievable sense of balance when you're weighing out such critical priorities. And instead, I think what you have to seek is harmony. And, in harmony, that's where, all these notes are playing, a meaningful part of your life. And at certain moments, one ramps up, and at certain moments, it ramps down, and others take center stage. And so I think for each person, they need to figure out what that cadence looks like. I mean, I can tell you probably the most powerful thing that I've done in my career, and I've kind of gone in and out of this practice over the years, is that on Friday nights at sundown, and this is a Jewish tradition known as Shomer Shabbos, where you don't work from sundown to sundown, Friday night to Saturday night. Oftentimes, like, the strict interpretation is you don't use any power, you don't conduct business, like it's very, very strict. But I looked at that and I said, the real reason for this tradition is so that you can have a day of rest, so that you can focus on being with loved ones, so that you have time to think bigger thoughts, to really be true to yourself and surround yourself with those that you care about most deeply. And the way that I can achieve that is not by like not getting in a car. It's simply just by turning off my access to social media, to email, as well as to Slack. Like email and Slack in particular. And I'll say collectively, I haven't been as consistent with it, but there was a period where for probably 2 years, I implemented that practice. And now, on a consistent basis, I'll use it and I'll hopefully be implementing it like on a more regular basis going forward. But that is critical for me to be able to have that quality time with my kids, and also, to have a little bit of space to not be so heads down in your business every day and be able to kind of digest bigger thoughts and have a bit more perspective. I think it's really important.
Absolutely. Well, and we'll give a bio about all the things you've accomplished. It's really quite incredible, from the, 30 under 30, and obviously Pencils of Promise and MissionU, which I really do want to dig into MissionU a little bit. But what I really want to go back to is, if you went to work at Bain, I would imagine, you wanted to get this good job, high paying, tough, work with challenging problems, work with smart people, right? And to then transition into Pencils of Promise seems like you had to have some realization that money or this business world, this for-profit path isn't for me, and really I'm more mission driven. Did you have that, or was it always something you'd envisioned?
It's kind of tough because I think at different stages in my life, I've had different perspectives. When I was a teenager, I really wanted to pursue making as much money as possible. I was obsessed with Wall Street, and I figured happiness was found in making a bunch of money. And then when I was 21, I went into the developing world for the first time as a backpacker. I would pursue these entrepreneurial, little businesses, take the money that I made and get a one-way ticket and backpack for multiple months in various countries throughout the developing world. And, at that point, everything changed. And I thought, oh my gosh, all happiness is actually found in service to others. And these folks have so little. And my life has been so blessed by, just by virtue of being on American soil and, having a loving family, going to a great public school system. I should be giving back. And that's where I'm going to find joy. And, after a lot of those travels, I moved into New York and I was working at Bain, and I realized, even though I was on a path to making money, I wanted to have an experience that I knew every single day. I'm devoting most of my waking hours to my work. I want that time to be spent knowing that I'm making the world better, and not just in a small way, but in a really substantive one. And that's been my North Star. It's not, hey, I don't want to make money. Like, I have no desire to be impoverished as a result of helping others live a better life and get out of poverty in a lot of the work that I've done. But if that's a byproduct that, there's a cap on the amount of capital that I can make, I'm willing to make that trade-off. But that's not like the impetus. It's why I've spoken a lot about the fact that I actually hate the phrase nonprofit. I don't think anyone wakes up and is like, I don't want to not profit today. And that's not the actual motivation behind any organization. The motivation is to serve others, to create meaning, to drive greater purpose in people's lives. And so I think the whole space should just be known as for purpose. And I think what we're seeing now is the evolution of for-profit companies that are incredibly mission-driven. And that was the origin of MissionU. How I spend the majority of my time now is it was B Corp from day one. It was incorporated as a public benefit corporation, which allows us to raise money from traditional investors and not be thinking about like fundraising year round. It's just a large amount of capital comes in at once, and then you go out and use that capital to execute. And if you do a good job, you can raise more and venture back and all that stuff. But as a B Corp, you can really serve your social mission as well. And oftentimes you can make decisions that are in the best interests of your social mission, even if it means reduction of financial gain. And so that's where I'm motivated, is at the intersection where I can certainly support my family, my loved ones. I enjoy being a meaningful donor to great organizations that I believe in. And if you're not in a position where you're making capital, that's pretty hard. But the core driver for me in all of this is that I want to make the world a better place, and I want my work to reflect that.
Adam, it's really incredible talking to you. And I've heard interviews of you, and I've seen videos. I've kind of known about you for a while, but hadn't dug in obviously at this great a detail because I hadn't talked to you. But I'm just saying this for the listeners out there because they kind of know my story and you don't. And it's not about me, but I was a finance graduate. All I wanted to do was work on Wall Street, make millions of dollars. I went into finance, commercial real estate. I made six figures by 24. And then instead of my kind of realization being going to a third world country, I started having really bad anxiety and panic attacks because I realized this wasn't at all what I wanted to do, and it didn't motivate me. I'm not money motivated. And so I took some time off and eventually co-founded a nonprofit in the healthy food space, which is still thriving. It's now out in San Francisco and making a difference. But the reason I say this is because although I've since kind of iterated from that and am now teaching and speaking and doing workshops at organizations, I'm definitely the happiest now that I've been as a professional. And the reason I go through that story is just because, look, you clearly have much more intelligence than I do, much greater work ethic, have made a much bigger impact. But in our own worlds, right, we've taken this from the finance office six-figure thing to how we deem success. And I just put that out there because we get so many emails from people like, I'm in this job, I don't know what to do, I've got to support this. And I just feel like, look, two stories right here that ended up working out at not a too late of an age. It's just really refreshing to talk to you about this.
Yeah, likewise. And I didn't know the extent of your full background, but it's really extraordinary what you've been able to accomplish as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's just so great. And so obviously I aspire to be more like you. That's why I have you on the show. So I want to ask you this. A lot of people have big ideas. And in fact, we're going to talk about MissionU, but I had a very similar idea about 5 years ago, which I still think is a pretty good idea, which is the same way we invest in companies, we should be able to invest in people. So say I know a smart kid who's 16, right? Or a great athlete who's 16. I say, all right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 200 grand now. I'm going to buy 3 shares of you, right? And I get your, 10% of your income until you're 40, something like that. Now, I haven't really thought through mine, but I think it's a good idea. My point is,
there's actually a business that was started for this exactly called Upstart.
Are you kidding me? Did it fail?
They pivoted into more of like a direct loan business, and now they're worth a couple $100 million. So it's a good starting place, but there is reason that it's a very challenging business, but I won't go through all of that. But it's a good core idea.
Well, that's where I failed though. See, the problem I have is I'll think through it and then I will go to the, oh my gosh, but then what do I got to collect their tax records, and then I got to sue them, and then I own them, and blah, blah, blah. And then I just don't do it. For you, Pencils of Promise or MissionU, you had the idea and you made it happen. You didn't just make it happen. You made it awesome. Both of them. And so what is it that allows you to take these seemingly impossible things and make them possible? And why do you have that kind of belief in yourself?
Probably better ask my colleagues and coworkers or my family members than me as to what it is. But, I mean, I would say a couple things. So first and foremost, I mean, Pencil of Promise, I can confidently say has been a success. By the end of this year, we should break ground on our 500th school around the world. We've been around for 10 years, raised more than $50 million. So I feel good about that. MissionU obviously still in its early days, and I think that we've done an amazing job of gaining early traction. Full profiles on the Today Show, Time Magazine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thousands and thousands of people applying to the program, but there's still a lot of work ahead, and I fully recognize that. We've only been around for about 2 years.
Sure.
I think the core tenets of my approach, and yourself and our listeners can maybe attribute these to some of the things that have happened or not. But I think the first thing is that I do a lot of the really hard introspective work that doesn't happen overnight. It usually takes years to get to a moment where I feel like I've had some type of recognition or breakthrough in an idea that somebody else has not pursued in the same exact way, and enables me to have just a level of relentless conviction that an idea can work that others don't often have. And so that's kind of step one, is like, I think a lot of people are just like, I'm going to do a brainstorming exercise and then I'm going to have an idea and I'm going to go build that business. But, I've had a journal since I was 16, so 18 years that I've been writing in journals, and I have dozens filled. And that's a very important part of my process, to get out my honesty, get out my truth. And I'm constantly kind of pressure testing and checking ideas against people. And so I think the first part is I'm willing to be patient so that I can accelerate really, really quickly when I have conviction in an idea, because, you don't get that many at bats if you're always constantly kind of changing. I think the second piece is that I really, really, really enjoy helping others succeed. And I think that manifests in a number of ways, right? Part of it is the direct service of, working with students in Pencil of Promise and in MissionU. But I think the other really powerful way is in building teams that give people a huge amount of autonomy. I'm the opposite of a micromanager. I align with people in a direction, and let them know that however I can or am able to best support them, they can receive from me. But I'm not going to be constantly checking in on you throughout the day, being like, how's it going? Did you do this well? Did you do that? I think I'm a pretty good judge of talent. And I've certainly made my mistakes on this front, but my interviewing style is pretty unique. And once I get to a conviction with somebody, I put them in a position to really succeed and grow. And so I think that's the second piece, is a lot of people that are extremely talented don't have the willingness to loosen the reins and actually give them to somebody else entirely for a specific task or function. And part of my training at Bain was in building organizational infrastructure and helping to create culture that allows each person to really fulfill their true sense of purpose and talent and ability and ultimately superpowers. And so I think that's the two pieces, is when I believe in something, my conviction in it is relentless. And I think people now know that if Adam really, really deeply believes that something can happen, he's going to find a way,
right,
to get a great outcome here. It might not be the outcome that he started with day one or that we expected, but something good is going to happen, and this guy's not going to stop trying until there's either a safe landing or a really, really big outcome here. Just pure failure is not an option for this guy. And then the second is being able to both find and recruit and then really empower great teams.
I'm really curious now, and you don't have to give away all your insight on it, but what makes a good interviewee? What are you looking for?
Well, my interviews are usually a lot more about fit than function. I tend to let my teams focus on function. Is this person capable in the certain area that we need them to be capable in? Others have probably, more direct styles of getting to that. I do always ask people to do a take-home assignment that is usually reflective of what their job's actually going to be. And so I'll say, like, please spend somewhere between 3 and 5 hours on this. Return it to me within 5 days. And, like, here's the task that I'm going to ask you to put together. And it's like the exact job or a project within their exact job. So I can see how they think through problems, how they process that information, and what their output would look like. That helps me a lot. But in the actual interview, honestly, what I'm really looking for is a number of character traits. The first is integrity. The second is ambition. The third is confidence. Like, do you believe that you're good at your job? Because I want you to believe that you're good. But, the fourth is kind of a counter to that, which is, humility. And then the fifth is, like, is this someone that I like and want to be around? Because, like, I want a culture of people that like being around each other. And obviously, if I'm, employee one, like, I got to start with people that I want to be around.
Right.
So I will share one thing that I think hopefully your listeners will find of value, which is a question that I ask every person I interview that usually is pretty disarming for somebody. But I'm going to ask it to you actually right now.
All right. Oh, God, man, I'm on the spot. Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. So I usually wait till the end of an interview. It's like the second to last question that I'll ask. But my question for you is, what do you consider to be your single greatest success that is unrelated to your career or your family?
Here's what I would say, in all honesty. I would say that my willingness to accept that I'm not motivated by a lot of societal standards took a lot of time, a lot of struggling, a lot of hard work. Because when from 15 to 25, you think your only goal is to make $1 million, and all of a sudden you are kind of forced to address that and take the not safe route, the route that doesn't pay money, and look at what you had imagined your future to be isn't really what you want, and then be willing to make a life change to do it, which I did. I'm proud of that because I think from everything I've learned, people look back and ask, what have they accomplished in terms of good in the world? And I think I'll be able to do that only because I made that change. So that would be my answer.
That's great. I mean, so the reason that I like that question is it tells me a lot about the person and who they are, not what they do. Like I know something about your character as a result of how you answer that question. And it's not something that is going to surface when I ask you about your strengths or your weaknesses or a time that you went through a challenging situation. Like, all of those are, to some degree, a little bit canned for most people. They know those answers, but it's not about the function. It's really about the fit. And, I asked someone that we were looking at a marketing hire who I knew, like, functionally could do the job. I knew she was, like, a good person. But, when I asked her that question, her response was that she organizes monthly volunteering cleanups that happen in the Marin Headlands outside of San Francisco, where our office is based. And every single month, she's been doing it for years. And it's something that, she's actually brought friends into, colleagues, but she really loves it. And, like, that never would have come up in a standard interview.
Yep.
But as soon as I heard that, I was like, I want this person in our office. I want somebody who's doing that in their spare time, bringing that type of just commitment to the well-being of the world, and takes action on it and can organize. Like, I learned so much about that person in that question. So that's hopefully reflective of my interview.
That's an awesome question because, and I'm sure listeners are going through it in their head, but the first place you go is, regardless if you try to get away from career, you go to either career or family. And to separate those
is family. So everyone is career. And I asked this question to a number of people, what do you consider your greatest accomplishment outside of your career? And it's always like, my relationship with my kids, I'm a good, mother, father, I took care of my mom when she was ill. And, like, those are all nice to knows, but I'm just kind of assuming that most people that are at least making it to, like, a final round interview would be a good family member, right? So when you take that out, it forces you to, like, really think about either who you are or do you have a third dimension to your life outside of work and family? And I want to know that about you.
Right. Wow. That's great. Well, thanks for sharing that, Adam. Let's do this. I want to dig deeper into MissionU now.
Sure.
Tell us about it. Give us the broad brush, and then I've got some targeted questions for you.
Sure. So MissionU was really born out of my experience seeing what happened to my wife. She grew up in a very loving family without a lot of financial means, and really was kind of sold on the idea that college was the path to success and prosperity. As we tell tens of millions of young people every single year. And she ended up going to college both in-state and out-of-state, public school and private school, trying to reduce the costs along the way, and still got absolutely crushed with student debt on high interest rates. And by the time that I met her, she's, I think, 24, she had $110,000 of student debt. And it was just absolutely debilitating. And she didn't really acquire any of the applicable career skills that were going to be relevant for the type of jobs that she was interested in. And so it was just this huge mistake. And the more that we spoke about it, and the more that I learned that student debt was the only debt in the country that couldn't be discharged through bankruptcy, which is crazy, the more I wanted to really create an offering that could best serve students and their families within the higher education landscape. And so MissionU currently is a higher education program that you apply for when you get in. You don't pay us upfront. And instead, we really invest in you across the course of your participation in our program. And what you commit to is a contribution back to us only if and when you are making above a certain threshold of income. So only if you essentially land a solid job. And it's a mix of soft skills, hard skills, and technical skills across your participation. We partner with today's leading companies like Uber and Lyft and Spotify and Warby Parker and more to help design the curriculum. Have guest speakers from top tier companies, essentially on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Our students visit some of the best companies in the world. They were at Airbnb a few weeks ago. They were at Square. They were at Spotify. They've been to a lot of incredible places. So you get exposure to these not only company cultures but also the personnel. And our partners get early access to our graduates. So they're getting this great pipeline of just not only talented but also incredibly diverse talent, which we know is really, really critical today.
One thing that strikes me is you said that these companies help build the curriculum. What do you say to the person that says, well, then you're just really creating a factory of people who are only learning what's necessary for a few specific jobs?
I mean, one, I would say that a lot of our students come in with an interest in a specific field, and our goal is to equip them for those types of jobs. I mean, our major right now is in data analytics and business intelligence. Data analytics is a skill set that is applicable within marketing, finance, operations, data science, strategy, yada, yada, yada. And so what we look for is really applicable skills on the hard skill side. And then the soft skill side is about self-development, holistic knowledge, in particular, effective collaboration with others, teamwork, communication, delivering and receiving critical feedback in a professional context. So we cover a pretty wide swath. In fact, a lot of the kind of core tenets of a liberal arts education are about critical thinking and reasoning. And I would say that any student that goes through our program is actually really, really significantly taught around those types of concepts and put into various situations that are not just about hard technical skills, but we have an entire curriculum around these soft skills and holistic self-development. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think it's important if someone's going to pay for an educational program that, they should know what they want their outcome to be. And if your outcome is, I want to have a coming of age experience and I just want to grow, then, I mean, if your family can pay for that, then more power to you. But I don't think you should take on crushing levels of debt in order to do that. If you can, provide a reasonable alternative from an economic standpoint that leads to real financial security. And so, again, like we're looking for what we define as career starters. Some people are more of the upskilling individual, but most of our students are incredibly motivated from a career perspective, and that's who we're looking to serve.
I can imagine, and I'm sure many see this as an opportunity that they didn't think they would have due to the financial implications. And with that in mind, you're going to get the more dedicated student, the more curious person, etc.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm assuming you went to college, right?
Yep.
Do you feel that college benefited you in any way?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
How so do you think? And do you think people will miss out on any of that?
So I'll tell you how it benefited me. First of all, I went to Brown University. So,
okay.
I was fortunate to be able to attend what I would say is one of, the top colleges really in the world. And so the first thing that was really beneficial for me was building a network of folks who challenged my ideas and became lifelong friends. And I think if you spoke to any student at MissionU, they would fundamentally say that is what they have experienced in their cohort. with us. So I think they're still getting that experience. For me, there was also a kind of coming of age component, which I don't think was as much about being in a college structure. The vast majority of the world between the ages of like 18 and 23 comes of age, and they're not on like a leafy green campus.
Right.
So I think it's purely like a function of just being at that age and having X many years to mature and grow and evolve. I would not be able to point to like really much at all that I learned in a classroom that was particularly beneficial in the way that I could look at trainings that I went through in my time at Bain that was incredibly beneficial.
Yeah.
But I think about why I had such a good experience. I also played on the basketball team, and that was obviously like a great component to my experience. But I look at the core parts, and we tried to say at MissionU, what can we deliver on a shorter period of time? But the reality is, I went to college. I entered as a freshman about 15 years ago. And the financial dynamics of attending college 15 years ago looked very different from how they look today. And so that was one piece. The second is, I had parents who grew up in poverty, worked themselves out of that poverty as a dentist and an orthodontist, and were able to save up enough on the dynamics when you and I were college age to enable me to go to school for 4 years and graduate without debt. And that was a gift that now as an adult I value in ways that I never did at that age, but it was such an extraordinary gift that they provided through their hard work. And the reality is the vast majority of people in this country don't have that experience. Today's freshmen on average entering college, by the time that they graduate, the projection is that they will have $50,000 of debt as a graduate. And you look at the average payback and the interest rates, it means they'll actually pay back close to $100,000 for that experience. And 7 in 10 college students are borrowers. And so the dynamics have just changed really drastically. And what we set out at MissionU to accomplish is an offering. And right now, obviously, it's more seen as a college alternative. And over time, my hope is that we find a way to really effectively and closely partner with the existing colleges, because I think the higher education landscape is an extraordinary thing. It benefits a tremendous amount of people, but there's a lot of folks that we're not serving very well. Mm-hmm. And to the extent that we can help those individuals, we're really excited to do so.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're taking, or you looked at the best parts of formal college education today and tried to keep those, and then add on to it efficiencies, the financial aspect, and the job viability at the end to really just create college 2.0, if you will. Was that an approach you took at looking at what's going right, what's going wrong?
Yeah. I mean, we did a whole bunch of analysis, spoke to both employers, folks in the college landscape, entrepreneurs, families, mothers, fathers, students, and really tried to understand, who we could best serve and put together a program that would enable them to build the lives and careers that they wanted.
It was crazy when you were talking about, how the financial things have changed, and mine was the same. My parents paid for me, and I got goosebumps when you mentioned, at the time I didn't realize how. I mean, I was thankful, but I didn't realize how much of a sacrifice that was. And now I'm a parent as well, and I realized the sacrifice, the lifetime sacrifice to be able to put 1, 2, however many kids through college. It is quite incredible. And what's also interesting is people have asked me, I have a 3-year-old, and said, well, have you started your college fund? And I said, no. And they said, why? And I said, because there's no way in 15 years college is going to be what it is today. And now, look, am I going to say money for them? Sure. But I don't believe it needs to be dedicated to this college fund, because I believe that brilliant entrepreneurs like yourself are working to change this ridiculous dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same boat as you. I haven't set up whatever it is, 529 plans for my kids. I mean, first of all, if I did put away money for them, I would much rather offer them that capital and say, look, you make the decision.
Yep.
By then, college is going to be like about north of $100,000 a year. And so I'd much rather say, look, I would like you to put together a plan to explain to me how you would like to spend $400,000 over the next 4 years. And if I'm a kid, I'm not, sitting on a campus. No. I'm probably, traveling for a period of time. Maybe I'm spending 6 months in an immersive educational experience. Maybe I'm trying to start a business or, participate in an organization that I believe in. But I think just given the cost dynamics, there is a better pathway in the year 2035 unless the financial dynamics change. And I'm hopeful that they do, because if they don't, a large part of this country is going to be incredibly disenfranchised as a result.
Absolutely. And so just to get this clear, so how long is the program, the MissionU program?
So our flagship offering is 1 year, but I would anticipate that going forward, there'll be a variety of options.
Yep. And so it's $0, and they come in and they get this great education. They're also linked to these companies. They get first dibs. What else? Have I missed anything? I mean, I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
So I just want people to be crystal clear on what it is you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, again, one of the things that we're already seeing is there's just way more demand for the program than we can possibly address. And so we're looking at how do we enable it to be a bit more accessible and flexible so that we can serve more people more rapidly than we can currently take on, given how many people are applying. And so, this flagship is kind of, the starting place, this 1 year program. But I think over time, what you can anticipate is a lot more optionality within the MissionU offerings. And so, likely looking at offering various different times that people can, length of time to participate, as well as different payback structures. I mean, we started with this income share agreement, which we deeply believe in. But, we have some folks that don't want to do that. They'd rather just pay a set amount, or they'd rather pay it up front, or they'd rather do a hybrid where some of it is up front and some of it is baked into the back end. So I think what you're going to see if you just go to MISSIONU.com, not YOU, just letter U, is depending when you listen to this, we're working really hard to make sure that we're putting out offerings that enable us to reach as many people as rapidly as we can while ensuring incredible quality.
Well, I got to say, as a father of one and soon to be two, probably in the next couple of days, we're expecting our second.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I hope you succeed, because hopefully you'll be saving me a boatload of money.
That's the plan.
Well, look, Adam, man, I aspire to be more like you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate all that you've accomplished. MissionU, the letter U, is the organization. Where else can people find you, read more about you, understand what you're doing, and support you?
Sure. My website is just adambraun.com, ADAMBRAUN.com, where I post blogs, talks, etc. Some free giveaways there too. And then on Instagram, I'm ITS Adam Braun, so it's Adam Braun. On Twitter, just at Adam Braun. And my book is probably the best way that you can really learn a lot more. When it came out, it went to number 2 on the New York Times bestseller list, and so it's had this huge following, and it seems to have really transformed a lot of people's perspectives and directions that they want to take their life. And the book is called The Promise of a Pencil, and it's on Amazon or pretty much any retailer nationwide. The Promise of a Pencil. That's right. That's where I heard you from. I think I saw you on Marie Forleo. You've been everywhere. Yeah. I mean, fortunately, people have been kind and said, here's a forum to tell your story. And the organizations are pencilsofpromise.org and MissionU, MISSIONU.com. Fantastic. Well, I know you got a meeting to hop into. Appreciate it again, Adam. Thanks so much. My pleasure. Have a great day. All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Adam Braun. Adam is the founder of MissionU and the author of The Promise of a Pencil, How an Ordinary Person Can Create Extraordinary Change. And as always, you can find his book on Amazon or at your local bookstore. And if you decide to purchase it through Amazon, please make sure to use the Smart People Podcast Amazon link located at smartpeoplepodcast.com/Amazon. If you're looking for other free and easy ways to support the show, please head over to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review for Smart People Podcast over there. It greatly helps support the show. If you'd ever like to reach out to the show, you can email us at smartpeoplepodcast@gmail.com or message us on Twitter @smartpeoplepod. And as Chris mentioned at the top of the episode, we are now releasing Smart People Society. So head over to www.smartpeoplepodcast.com/society for more information. All right, that's it for us this week. We've got a lot of great episodes coming up, so make sure you stay tuned, and we will see you all next episode.